Okay. Hi, this is Tim Lightfellow in the Kingdom of On-Tier, Society for Creative Anachronism. Seem to have had a little technical difficulty there. They muted my mic. Hopefully everything's working now. I was asked to create a video about the considerations for designing a tournament. I hope that I can do justice to this topic. There are a lot of things when you're designing a tournament that you kind of think through and that you don't necessarily itemize as something you think through. And so you may automatically consider them, but when it comes time to talk about the process, I may miss things. But I will do my best to kind of cover considerations and things around designing tournaments. And then I also have just kind of a few random targets to show as some possible example type targets you might come up with. Most of the targets I will be showing are designed to pin straight to a target, but I don't have any examples of like 3D shoots. I don't have examples of what would be referred to often as like a Popinjay style shoot, where you might hang stuffed animals or hang an object on a rope so that you can shoot at it and it can kind of spin during the shoot. Things like that. Those can be creative targets and really challenge, especially depending on how you do the scoring on the object, can be very challenging. Okay, so the first thing I try to consider when designing a tournament is what's the purpose of the tournament? Is this a tournament for new archers? Maybe it's like a little prize tourney. You're giving away some arrows or a bow or a bracer or archery books or something. You're trying to encourage new archers who, maybe don't get the greatest chance during champions tourneys and things like that. So you're saying, hey, this is your time. You guys come out and shoot. So you might be designing, in that case, more for fun shoots, things that will keep them engaged and, just things that tend to be a little more of chance rather than skills challenge type shoots. Is it a prize tourney? Is there an award? Is that award likely to draw a certain crowd of archers to participate? And would that impact like what that challenge might look like? Is it a champions tourney? Are you doing this specifically to test someone's skill, to prove that they are a very skilled archer and worthy of being a branch or principality or kingdom champion? Usually for this, you're looking at things that test several different ranges or maybe are just longer range, whereas like new archers, you might tend to keep it all to 20 yards because that's where they've probably been doing the most shooting. Is it a public demo? Is it something where you want to have fun, eye-catching stuff, things that kind of draw in the public to want to watch, that are a little bit of a challenge, but they're also a lot of fun and stuff that people don't get to normally shoot. Just, as a way of letting the archers demonstrate what is SCA archery. The next piece is, are there limiting factors? Do you have a space availability limitation? Maybe you only have room for your standard range of 20, 30, 40 yards, and you need to work within that. Maybe you can set up some oddball distances like 27 yards or, things like that make it a little more challenging because they have to figure out how to aim at this distance we don't normally shoot. Maybe you're literally stuck with, hey, the bales are here, you have to use them here. And so then figuring out how to maximize what you're doing for fun or for challenge using those distances. Or if they have extra space and you can basically do what you want. Is there a limitation on the amount of time you have? A lot of events have a lot of different tournaments happening. They may not want an archery tournament happening at the same time as a rapier tournament, as a heavy tournament, as a thrown weapons tournament, as an equestrian tournament. So you may be limited to, you get 1 hour, you get an hour and a half. And so designing with all the things that are going to go into your tournament and keeping that time constraint in mind. Number of archers likely to participate. That can also be a bit of a constraint. It can tie into the time because, if you have 30 or 40 archers showing up and, you have to do 3-4 waves on a target before you can switch out the target. Obviously, that's a lot more time involved than if there are 4 or 5 archers and they all shoot the target, you switch to the next one. So these are some of the considerations. Thinking about target options, like most things that are not champions tourneys tend to be made up entirely of novelty shoots. So maybe you go with a theme. Maybe it's all, say, King Arthur themed. Maybe it's all holiday themed. 4th of July, Halloween. Should mention that since that just finished. That's a common one. So maybe you're gearing things towards shooting ghost pumpkins. Maybe you're shooting 4-leaf clovers. Depending on the time of the year and what you're doing. Let's see. Other considerations for target options. Again, I'll show you. May hopefully help spark other ideas. Do you have a budget? Can you buy some targets? Do you have to make your own? If you aren't comfortable creating targets, just a little kind of aside here, you can perhaps look at your Kingdom site if they have any of their novelty shoots added to the site. That might give you some ideas that have been used and maybe haven't been used in a while, so you can use them again. The SSAC site, they always have both the ones that have been run recently and usually a pretty good selection of ones submitted. So you could look through those and see if there's something that, hey, that's really sounds challenging, that fits the bill. And remember, you can always modify the rules, modify the scoring, do things to better fit what you're doing. Maybe you have really limited and you say, you know what, this time, instead of scoring 1 through 5, the scoring is 5 through 1. So you change where the archer has to focus. Just things like that can alter, can be fairly quick setup, and then can still provide a challenge because you're making them kind of think backwards the way they're not using. We had one person who ran a very silly timed end where you were allowed 1 shot in 30 seconds. And so at the very start, he said, load up 3 arrows in your quiver. Now step to the line, knock your arrow. And when I say loose, shoot. And people were such in the mindset of a timed end that they would hurry up and draw and loose instead of draw, find their aim point, take their time, because you have 30 seconds to make your 1 shot. And, the fact that he had them put extra in the quiver helped reinforce. So sometimes doing things like that, sometimes doing things like you tell the archers when to draw and aim and loose. And so you can mix up how much time they have each shot. So again, some different ideas on targets. Some other considerations, if you expect handbow and crossbow, then you might want to consider what type of targets tend to benefit one or the other, and either make sure you include an even number of each to offset each other if you're having them compete directly with each other, or don't include any of them so that you're using targets that should be equally challenging for everyone. For instance, a lot of handbow shooters, and again, depending on your area, a lot of handbow shooters may get 7 or 8 arrows off in a timed end. A lot of crossbow shooters, at least around here, I'm kind of the exception, 4 or 5 or maybe 6. So if your handbow shooters tend to get more arrows off, they obviously have an advantage there in the potential of a higher score. So then you might pick another target that's a bit of an odd distance that, you know, might be a little easier for a crossbow shooter to quickly sight in on and start hitting to offset that timed end. So things like that to consider if you're familiar with crossbow and handbow and the way each one works. If not, you might involve someone and just say, hey, you know, if you're a crossbow shooter, where do you feel you have advantages and where do you feel you have disadvantages on a royal round or on whatever as compared to a handbow shooter? And ask handbow shooters the same thing, help you come up with ideas. Interestingly, on tier, there aren't a lot of crossbow shooters, so this is something that really been a consideration until the last several years. Okay, being creative within reason. If it takes you a half hour to set up a shoot for someone to do, you're going to lose audience. You're going to lose probably archer interest. If it's something you can get set up fairly quickly and you have help with, obviously more creative is more creative, more challenging tends to also be more fun. So there's kind of a balance on that one. You may find that with certain ones you want to arrange having people know how to set them up and be ready to assist you. Let's see. One of the things we've done, sorry, my headset might be messing up. One of the things we did a couple times is 2 different bow types required. So if you have a person who's primarily a crossbow shooter, they would have to have a handbow of some sort. You couldn't use 2 different crossbows. And if you have someone who only shoots longbow, they would have to also have a recurve or a horsebow or a crossbow. And so, you know, again, helps kind of level the playing field, because if you have someone who's good, not good at the other, and someone who's, you know, average with both, it can give either of them the opportunity to be the better archer that day. But in something like that, you have to publicize it ahead of time. You can't expect people to show up at the event and then say, oh, you need to have 2 different bow types. So we had to make sure when we did that it was put out there through email lists and Facebook well in advance. Let's see, giving consideration to things, time in your planning. So retrieval time. If you have non-standard targets, especially anything like popinjay or something where there's nothing behind to stop arrows or bolts, there's going to be a lot longer time used looking for the shots that missed. Obviously, if you can, you want to plan to put something behind them, but if you can't, you want to just make sure that in your planning, you understand there's going to be some extra time being used up in that process. Let's see, crossbows, if they're involved, to be honest, I've As a crossbow shooter, I've occasionally looked at someone's novelty shoots and walked away. Not literally, walked off, put my bow down, watched, because they designed things that were hanging and things that were like, say, wand shoot type things, all of which had nothing as a backstop. And if I'm aiming at a high target with my crossbow, that bolt is traveling, even if the target's at 15 yards, that bolt's going probably 60, 70 yards. So if I don't see something that I feel is going to provide what I need to stop my crossbow bolt, I'm going to not shoot at it, because safety, number one, biggest thing, right? If you have a 40-yard range and maybe you only have a 20-yard safety zone, and my bolt's going to possibly fly out the back end of that safety zone, not worth it. And the other thing is just the chances of finding it, even if it stays within the safety zone. So keeping some of those things in mind, again, if you're going to have a mixed competition, try and set up so there's some sort of backstop. You can use weird distances, like maybe you use 15-ish yards, 16-ish yards, but you set it up in front of the 20-yard bale, so you have a backstop, so that it's going to prevent people from going however many yards down. You set them up so that they're not quite as high in the air, so that it's going to lower the trajectory they're being shot at. Things like that are considerations. Sorry, then we were talking about time. So setup time, changing out target time, looking for shots that missed. All of those, as best you can, should be planned into your time that you're going to need for your shoots. It's not always possible. Sometimes we really underestimate, because we think we have this thing to do well and stop arrows, and we find out that people are completely overshooting or shooting to the side and spending a lot more time than we thought looking. You can't always plan for that. Do the best you can to help your time and hopefully not create frustration with how long something is taking. Personal opinion, if I'm designing and running a tournament, I don't feel I should ever be competing in that tournament. I don't know within other kingdoms how people feel, how that kind of thing is handled, but it can easily be argued that if I'm competing in a tournament I designed, that I might have designed the shoots to benefit my shooting. So I don't go there. If I'm doing a tournament, it's for everyone else to shoot, not me. If I do shoot, I make it clear that I'm, maybe I have one or two shoots that I'm wondering how are they working out, and I want to try them just to get a feel for, was this successful, or do I need to tweak this shoot to use later? But I'm going to make sure that people are clear that that's what I'm doing. I'm not competing. And again, that's, depending on your region and what their expectations are and situations. I mean, you may have a Kingdom Archery Marshal who was suddenly forced into designing a tournament that they planned to compete in because someone dropped out of doing it at the last. It's literally throw something together, but I wanted to shoot. It's kind of hard to tell them no if they were planning to shoot this thing and they weren't intending to design this thing. But if it were me in that situation, I would probably ask the archers, are you okay with me competing? I had intended to. I ended up having to put this together. Find out how other archers feel. If they're all cool with it, hey, awesome. Usually most of us are. I mean, we want more people shooting, but we also don't want and especially champion tourney, I think, is the biggest place where that, competing in your own tournament looks questionable. Okay, so I think I've covered a lot of the things we consider. I'm sure I'm probably missing stuff. I apologize if there's anything that's obvious that I've somehow completely overlooked. Like I said, I've kind of tried to actually take notes on this one so that as I thought of things, I put them onto a document so that I had a little bit of a guide to make sure I at least covered those topics and didn't forget while the one-eyed monster camera is pointing at me. Okay, so I will now show you, hopefully, I'm using the wide angle camera so you see all the mess behind me because I'm hoping to show you some targets and I figured that was the best camera to use. It's unfortunately picking up a bit of a bright spot from the lights, so I apologize for that. So some of the types of things we've seen done is this is literally, I think this is like some metal garden stake for plants. And then just, some sort of design so this can go straight in the ground so you can have people shooting downward at it. Again, as mentioned, if you have something low targets, I do recommend trying to have some sort of bail or some sort of stop behind it. Especially if you're doing them short, because Mid-Realm, Kingdom of the Middle, did a class earlier today where they talked about techniques for shooting handbow at short targets. What I've found with shooting crossbow at short targets, we're talking like 10 yards or less, is normally I shoot standing, but if I angle down like this with the crossbow, the bolt slides off the front or has that potential. So what I will often do on the short ones is I'll sit down and shoot. Well, that means handbow might be coming in at an angle where it's likely to hit the ground and be perfectly visible. My crossbow is going straight through and straight on back, which makes it hard to find. So again, some of the considerations and showing you some targets where those kinds of things can be a direct impact on what you're doing. I mentioned holiday shoots. So funny thing here in Wyewood in Ontario, every year do something. We do a shoot called Cupid Gets the Shaft. So we do Valentine's themed stuff. So again, if you have a little bit of a budget, you might be able to go to like your local craft shop and they have, this is a plastic wreath. So you might be able to get some themed wreaths, or I mean, you can even buy, a lot of the craft shops have just like metal rings or straw rings or foam rings. And so for a little bit of money, you can often get stuff that's pre-made so that you aren't having to use all of your time trying to make special targets, but you can still do creative, interesting targets. Okay, let's see. Then we'll get onto some of the cardboard ones. So this one is literally frogs. And so that, as you might imagine, the biggest frogs were the least amount of points, going down in size to the ones that were the most amount of points. So again, if you're doing a theme, these ones and the ground ones happen to be that they were doing amphibian and lizard themes. I don't recall the reason, but so we had some creative novelty shoots around those themes. Some ones that I created for the fun challenge of it is doing half targets in just playing around with the order of the colors. So this one actually stayed in the right order. That one I kind of messed with. So it's 42315, 25143, and that one was outer to inner 5 through 1. So these can be used in several different ways. I can set just one up and have people shoot at it. You could do them as a rainbow. You can do, one of the things we've done is side by side, where you have, if you're doing a competition, you have basically one end where an archer shoots at one side and one where they shoot at the other to compete against each other. We have once or twice done timed. So another option, that one obviously kind of sticks with the 5-color theme, and sometimes in tournaments they don't want that, but just to share some other ideas. Most of us are familiar with wand shoots, so this was a modified wand where instead of just hitting the inner line in the wand is 5 and the outer line is 3, that's 1 through 5. And the last one I have to show is this one, which my wife came up with. And this one literally, not sure how that got there, that'd be 0 points. So the idea here, if you think about the way, I'll use this as the example. Most of the targets we buy, each color is split in half with a line. So what we did here is we took the whole white color, then we cut out the width of the next half a color, then we took that whole section, then we cut out the next half a width, took that section, cut out the next, and so what you get is a target with about a third of it missing and space in between, so there's plenty of opportunity. The archer basically has to choose where they think they can get the most points for their shots. So like here, okay, there's a nice big section of red, so if you want to go for that to get 4 points out of your shot, if you want to go for gold, it's smaller, and the chance of landing on the side and getting 0 instead of 5. So it's kind of a risk-reward type target where you have to decide what you're going to go for. One that I thought I had and wasn't able to find is, again, a 5-color cut into pie slices with all of them turned outside, so it ends up star-shaped. Same type of thing, risk-reward. Are you good enough to hit that point out at the end that's gold? Or are you going to aim back a little ways at red? Or are you more likely to hit where it's blue, which is a bigger section? So that kind of thing can be used to force an archer to choose how much risk they want to take based on what they feel the level of competition is, and can lead to obviously interesting results, because if they take the risk and miss, then pretty soon they're playing chase and catch up, trying to get their score back up with other archers. Again, as I'm sure that you can always do like hanging targets and that. I don't have any examples of those. I've seen everything from stuffed Barneys, stuffed Elmos, random stuffed animals, which tend to go over better with the kids than picking their potentially favorite kids show characters. Foam boxes and cubes, regular boxes. Did one shoot where it was literally a hollow box. And on that one, we had so many people shooting that up with, I think 3 of my bolts got broken because my bolts were in one side and an arrow came in another side. So brings up another consideration is how often do you retrieve on a target to try to limit the chances of arrow or bolt damage, right? If you have 20 people shooting a 20-yard target, you want to break it up into waves so that you don't have, 20 times 6, 120 arrows all in the target at once. There's going to be something Robin Hooded and broken. So that is all I can think of as far as those considerations. There was one thing that was mentioned that, I don't typically consider when designing a shoot, but you might, which is whether or not you want to submit it for Grand Archery Tournament credit. And there are specific rules for that, which should be able to be found on the Grand Archery Tournament scores site. I think they've reduced it to 5 ranked archers in that category participating for it to count. So for instance, if you have crossbow shooters, you would have to have 5 ranked crossbow shooters in order for the scores to count for all the crossbow shooters. Same with handbow. And the reason they do that is that gives them an evaluation. If you have ranked people and you see essentially how they're ranked and essentially what their scores look like, that gives you a rating system to apply to all the crossbow shooters, or handbow shooters, same thing. So that's why they have that rule in place. If you're looking to do that and you're struggling to have enough people ranked, you might encourage people to shoot ICACs or SSAC shoots before your tournament if there's time, because those are 2 shoots they can do without being ranked that will earn them a ranking. Okay, I hope that I've given you some things to think about and some things that might assist with designing your tournaments. As always, if you have any feedback or comments or questions, feel free to reach out to me. And thank you for watching. Have a good day.